It was the middle of winter in 2018. I was driving home from my parents' house, a long 4-hour trip across mostly empty highways. Around midnight, my gas light came on. Normally, I would have kept pushing until I hit a bigger town, but the road had been deserted for miles, and the idea of being stranded out there in the freezing cold terrified me more than stopping. Finally, after 20 minutes of watching that orange warning light blink, I spotted a gas station sign glowing faintly in the distance. The place looked half dead. Only one row of lights above the pumps was still on, buzzing weakly, and the rest of the lot was swallowed in darkness. The convenience store attached to it was dark too. No neon open sign, no movement inside. But I didn't care. I just needed gas. I pulled up to pump 4, the only one under a working light. The snow crunched under my tires, and when I stepped out, the cold hit me so sharply I felt it in my teeth. The night was silent except for the buzzing light above me and the faint whistle of wind cutting across the lot. That's when I noticed him. Across the lot, near the ice machine, stood a man. At first, I thought maybe he was the attendant, but there was something off. He wasn't moving, wasn't smoking or looking at his phone. He was just standing there, hands in the pockets of a dark jacket, face shadowed, watching me. I tried to play it cool, slipping the nozzle into my car, but every few seconds I'd glance over. He hadn't moved an inch. I told myself maybe he was just a drifter, maybe waiting for someone to pick him up. But the longer I stood there, the more wrong it felt. He was too still, too focused. Then, the sound of footsteps. Slow, crunching on the icy pavement. I snapped my head around. The man had moved closer. He was now only about 20 feet away, half hidden under the broken light near the air pump. His head tilted slightly, like he was studying me. My chest tightened. I forced myself to look away, praying the tank would fill faster. My mind was racing. What if he was going to rob me? Or worse? Finally, the nozzle clicked. My heart leapt. I shoved it back into the pump and jumped into my car, locking the doors instantly. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to calm myself. The lot was empty. The man was gone. For a second, relief washed over me. Maybe I just imagined it. Maybe the darkness was playing tricks on me. Then came a sound that nearly made me stop breathing. Tap, tap, tap. 3 slow knocks against my rear passenger window. I froze. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. Very slowly, I turned my head. The glass was fogged from my breath, but there was no one there. I couldn't take it anymore. My survival instinct kicked in, and I floored it out of the lot, tires squealing against the ice. My headlights cut across the darkness, and in my rearview mirror, I saw him again. The man stood in the middle of the road behind me, motionless, his head tilted just slightly, watching my car disappear into the night. I didn't stop again until I was nearly 2 hours away. And even then, when I finally pulled into a crowded station with bright lights and people, I couldn't shake the feeling that if I turned around, he'd still be there, waiting. This happened in the summer of 2015. I was on a road trip with 2 of my close friends, James and Mike. We were driving through the desert somewhere between Nevada and Arizona, where the highway stretched for miles without a single sign of life. The sun had set hours earlier, and the world outside our car windows was nothing but endless blackness. The only light came from the thin beam of our headlights cutting through the dark. That's when the gas light blinked on. At first, we weren't too worried. We figured we'd eventually come across the town, or at least a truck stop. But 30 minutes passed, then 45, and with every mile, that orange glow on the dash felt like a countdown. Finally, we spotted a small cluster of lights up ahead. As we got closer, we realized it was a gas station. Relief washed over all of us. But as soon as we pulled in, something felt wrong. The place looked ancient, like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. The paint on the walls was peeling, the signs were faded, and the pavement was cracked with weeds growing through. Most of the windows on the small convenience store were boarded up. The lot was empty, no cars, no people. But strangely, one pump had a faint glow on its screen. It looked like it still worked. We didn't have a choice. I pulled up and cut the engine while James got out to stretch. He muttered something about how creepy the place was before wandering toward the building to peek inside. Mike stayed by me, watching nervously as I slid the nozzle into the car. The silence was heavy. Too heavy. The only sound was the faint squeak of the pump and the soft hiss of desert wind. Then Mike stiffened. "Dude, look inside," he whispered. I followed his gaze to one of the uncovered windows. Behind the dusty glass, something moved. It was a figure. Tall, thin, almost inhumanly tall. At first, I thought maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me, but then James shouted from across the lot, "Hello? Anyone in there?" The figure didn't respond. It just glided deeper into the shadows. My stomach dropped. There was no way this place should have had anyone inside. The store was clearly abandoned. Then, out of nowhere, the overhead lights above the pumps snapped on. First one, then another, buzzing loudly until the entire lot was glowing. The sudden brightness was blinding, and for a second, all three of us stood frozen in shock. That's when the banging started. Bang, bang, bang. Something was hitting the side of our car with heavy force, metal groaning under the impact. James sprinted back, yelling at me to start the engine. I whipped my head around, but there was nothing there. The lot was empty. Still, the pounding continued. Mike was screaming now. "Go, just go." I fumbled with the keys, finally getting the car started. The moment I hit the gas, the sound stopped. As we sped out of the lot, my headlights swung across the station one last time. That's when we saw it. The boarded-up double doors of the convenience store had swung open, and standing inside the doorway were three figures. They didn't move, didn't chase us. They just stood there, tall and thin, completely still, watching as we disappeared into the night. None of us said a word for almost an hour. Finally, James broke the silence. What the hell did we just see? None of us had an answer. And the strangest part? When I checked the GPS later, there was no record of that gas station existing. It wasn't on the map at all. This story takes place in the summer of 2016. I was on a long drive through Pennsylvania, visiting some friends from college. I left later than I should have, so by the time I was halfway there, it was past midnight. The road I was on was narrow, surrounded on both sides by thick woods. No streetlights, no traffic, just my headlights cutting through endless trees. That's when the low fuel light came on. I wasn't panicking, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. I pulled out my phone to find the nearest gas station, but service was practically non-existent. Just one bar flickering in and out. Eventually, I caught enough signal to pull up a map. The closest gas station was about 7 miles ahead. That didn't sound bad until I saw the reviews. People called it creepy, abandoned looking, the last place you'd ever want to stop. But I didn't have a choice. 7 miles later, I spotted a dim, flickering sign through the trees. Fuel and food open 24/7. The place looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. The parking lot was cracked and overgrown, the canopy lights above the pumps buzzing and flickering. I half expected the whole place to be deserted, but one pump had a dim green light on, so I pulled up. As I got out, the woods around me were so silent it felt unnatural. No crickets, no wind, nothing. just the buzzing light above me. I slid my card in and started fueling up. That's when I noticed something. The price per gallon wasn't digital. It was one of those old mechanical displays with numbers that clicked into place. I didn't even know those still existed. Halfway through fueling, I heard a sound behind me. Footsteps. Slow, heavy ones, crunching gravel. I froze, but didn't turn around right away. My mind started racing. Maybe it was just another customer. Maybe it was the clerk coming out for a smoke. But when I finally turned, there was nobody there. The footsteps had stopped too. I shook it off, trying to convince myself it was my imagination. I finished fueling, got back into my car, and locked the doors immediately. Before pulling away, I looked toward the station itself. The inside was dim, lit by a single buzzing fluorescent. And in the far corner, I saw movement. At first, I thought it was the clerk. But no, the figure was too tall, too still, just standing there in the shadows. I couldn't make out a face, just a long, dark shape with arms at its sides. I tried not to stare, but curiosity got the best of me. And when my eyes adjusted, I realized there was more than one figure. Two, no, three, all standing in different corners of the store, motionless. Something about the way they were spaced out, like mannequins, made every hair on my body stand up. I didn't care about paying. I just threw my car into drive and got the hell out of there. But it didn't end there. About 10 minutes down the road, I noticed headlights behind me, a pair of old, yellowish ones, bouncing slightly on the cracked asphalt. At first, I figured it was just another late-night driver. But when I sped up, they sped up. When I slowed down, they slowed down. And then, my worst fear, they turned off their headlights. Now, I couldn't see them in my mirror, just blackness. But I could feel they were still there, following me. I drove for miles, heart pounding, until finally, I saw the glow of a larger highway ahead. The second I merged onto it, the car behind me stopped following. I looked back one last time, and for a split second, their headlights flicked back on before the vehicle pulled a U-turn and disappeared into the woods. I didn't stop driving until I hit the next town. To this day, I have no explanation for what I saw inside that gas station or who was behind me in that car. All I know is, if you're ever driving through backroads in Pennsylvania and your GPS points you toward a tiny gas station in the woods, keep driving.